Hi guys, back to English language revision, and today I'm going to focus on English language paper 2, question 5, the big one. It's worth 40 marks, practically 50% of your paper. So you need to make sure that you actually dedicate a lot of time and a lot of practice on this question. So I like to refer to it to my students as the Q5 challenge because there are 5 main things that the mark scheme requires you to know. Now, obviously, these are the English exam key dates in case you don't know, but please check with your teachers for your specification because this is for AQA and I don't want to mislead anyone. So if you're doing Edexcel or anything else, it might not be the same, to be honest. So please check with your teacher. Now, let's go on to the 5 main things, what I call the shortcut to band 9. So for question 5, you're normally going to be asked to write to persuade, explain, advise, or what else could it be? Quite a few writing triplets. And I like to tell you to keep these 5 things in mind in order to succeed. If you are really bad at spellings, guess what? There's no time like the present. Please practice your spellings. Download from the internet Key Stage 4 spelling lists, Key Stage 3 spelling lists, and just practice. And I promise you, if you keep practicing every single day consistently, obviously you will get better. Punctuation marks, in case you don't know your colons from your semicolons, your dashes from your brackets, you have to complete some punctuation mark sheets. Yes, get a good grammar book from your school, borrow it of course, or purchase your own grammar booklet and start practicing the differences between colons and semicolons, because that's rule number 1. You see, if you don't have correct punctuation and spellings and grammar, it's like I'm going to make a cake and I've got the finest ingredients in the world, but the problem is I've sneezed all over it, I haven't washed my hands. Are you going to eat that cake? Hell no. So that's the same thing with spelling, punctuation and grammar. Even if you've written the most beautiful, fantastic essay, if you've misspelt several words, if your sentences don't make sense, it will look completely chaotic, and as a result, you have no chance of getting band 9. So please, 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 if anything, this is the most important step in the whole process, and this applies to question 5 for papers 1 and 2. Now, step 2, you must tap the question. Now, some of you probably don't know what that stands for. Obviously, it's an acronym, but I will go through what that stands for shortly. But yes, always make sure that you're following the examiner's instructions. Number 3, plan your writing. I don't understand why students feel that they can just write without planning. For example, those of you who complete poetry essays, especially to a very good standard, surely you've had to annotate that poem in first place in order to compare the language and structure, right? Well, if you're not annotating the poem, you're going to write a horrendous essay. But if you plan and annotate, fantastic. Same thing with writing. Okay, writing question number 5, you have to plan exactly what goes into each paragraph. I'm not saying spend 20 minutes, that's a rubbish idea. I need you to spend 5 minutes planning at least. Make sure you've planned which techniques you're going to use. You've planned when you're going to change the tone a little. You've planned the shape of your argument. Okay, and number 4, yes, language techniques are essential. So persuasive techniques, and there are acronyms. For example, aphorist, pirate mouse, trappers, whatever. Please memorize one of these and use all of those techniques in your persuasive writing. And number 5, ambitious vocabulary. Trust me on this one. You need to have ambitious vocabulary. If you're not used to amazing words, get a thesaurus. Start using some fantastic synonyms with caution. Obviously, check with your teacher if the sentence makes sense with that new word, because sometimes it doesn't. You can't just plonk in a new word now and then. You need to really double check and, make sure it makes sense. So that's high 5. So, test your memory. What did I say were the 5 stages? Number 1, spelling, punctuation and grammar. Number 2, tap the question. Number 3, plan out, map out exactly what you're going to write in which paragraph and how. Number 4, pirate mouse, trappers, a forest, whatever, you learn those persuasive techniques. And number 5, Shakespearean. I wonder what that is for. Ah, yes, his fantastic use of vocabulary. He actually invented quite a few words, and please don't invent your own words. Use some of his if you wish, or advanced ones from Thesaurus. So that's that. Now let's move on to TAP. What does TAP stand for? Well, when I tell you to tap the question, TAP stands for what type of text are you expected to write? For example, are you supposed to write a letter, a newspaper article, a blog, or a speech? And what kind of conventions should you be using? Okay, so for example, when you write a speech, you have to be aware of your audience and saying hello or hi there or welcome or thank you for inviting me to talk to you guys about. It's very different to a letter. And hopefully you know that with a letter you start off with dear so-and-so, whoever you're writing for. Audience, who's the target reader? Keep that in mind. Shape your writing so you really involve some personal touches so that you can get the reader's attention. And purpose. What's the point of your writing? Which writing triplet are you following now? Has the examiner told you to write to explain, or persuade, or advise? Now, most of you don't even look at the question, end up writing something completely different and lose marks. But those few of you who actually annotate the question carefully, think about what the examiner actually wants them to do, end up with the best marks. So please be one of those few. Right, English Language Paper 2 example question. Students do not benefit from learning in environments where the entire focus is on exams. If public exams were abolished tomorrow, students would improve and learning would flourish. Write a letter to your local MP in which you explain your point of view on this statement. 24 marks for content and 16 marks for SPAG. Right, so that's the question you've been given, and we're going to walk through it together. Just in terms of planning first. Right, so tap the question. You've got 10 seconds before we find out. It's a letter. Local MP, writing to explain. Now, some of you don't understand the differences between writing to explain, advise, persuade, and so on. But writing to explain mostly concerns the ability to explain how to do something and why you need to do something in the first place. It's quite instructional, gives you lots of step-by-step advice. Okay, that's how you explain something. For example, explain to me how to find the solution to this mathematical problem. You'd go through the steps. You'd explain how you get an answer and why it's important to follow this method. Another thing students fail to do is they ignore the statement, when actually the statement, and I'm talking about the quote marks given, normally has some starting sentences for you. Break down the statement into your own topic sentences and make sure that you're actually answering both parts of the statement. So in this statement it says, the first part, students do not benefit from learning in environments where the focus is upon exams. And then you've got the second statement, if public exams were abolished tomorrow, students would improve. So you have to see whether you need to explain your point of view in respect of these statements. And if you agree, you just have to simply add because, and then you agree. So I'd like you to have a go at familiarizing yourself with the different writing triplets. Are you a writing to advise person? Are you writing to explain person? Or are you writing to persuade, and so on? Read through these character descriptions here. So this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. And really ask yourself, which writing style does my personality suit the most? It's just a funny way of trying to keep your memory in regards to the different writing triplets. So are you a sympathetic person? That's B. You understand how people, especially those experiencing difficult times, feel, and you care about them enough to help them out. You see, if you are writing to advise. B people, they love to give advice, and you love to use modal verbs. You have to use modal verbs when you're writing to give advice. Are you a C individual? Let's find out. Your opinion is the best. No one else can disagree. You are incredibly biased. You love using rhetorical devices, and you think that you're right all the time. If so, you're writing to persuade person. You're explicitly assuming that the audience already agree with you, even if they don't, by using personal pronouns, we, us, our. Or are you a D person? You want people to think that you love to consider both sides of an argument before coming to a conclusion. But actually, all along, you're quite biased, and you're biased in a hidden way. Or are you an A person? You like to go through things step by step. You're always considering the consequences of actions before you act, and you make sure you explain how and why something is completed. Okay. Once you've decided which person represents you the best, you can find out which writing style you are similar to. Now, the only reason I'm doing this is so that you know the differences between explain, advise, persuade, and argue. Persuade is when you are completely biased. You don't really care about other people's opinions. And if you do talk about them, you just attack them. You belittle them. You start off by saying, some people might say, and then you go off to say, however, that is ridiculous because blah, blah, blah. If you're writing to argue, you pretend to look really balanced. You say, some people have said, and I understand that some people might disagree and say this. And then you come to a conclusion at the end of the essay, or you can start off with a clear opinion. In the whole, you need to make sure that you're not as biased as persuasive writing. When you're explaining, you have to go through things step by step, explain how and why. And when you're advising, you have to be sympathetic. No one's going to take advice from someone who's like, well, it's your fault in the first place. You know, you need to have sympathy. So you need to start off by using lots of emotive language. I understand how you feel and all of that. And you need to use modal verbs because you're not supposed to be bossy. Okay, you're not persuasive. If you're writing to advise, you're giving advice, you give lots and lots of solutions and lots of options. So you need to use modal verbs like could, would, should, okay? So that's that. And then next video, we'll go through an example student answer, and then we will think about how it could be improved. Thank you very much. And obviously, if you've enjoyed this video and want some more, please be wise and subscribe. Thank you very much.